Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers.
And I'm Stephanie Cox. We have insights and perspectives
on the stories shaping our world.
Breaking news, in-depth analysis, and inspiration to power your day.
Today we'll be covering the House hearing on free speech on college campuses, hosted by the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. We're going to hear from two current students, as well as a recent graduate, and the founder and chairman of the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law. This hearing is going to be about the current state of the First Amendment on college campuses amid recent attacks on students or anti-Semitic threats, anti-Israel sentiment on campuses. Some examples include Cornell University student Patrick Dye actually was arrested recently for allegedly posting threats to kill or harm Jewish men, women, and children.
Oh yeah, and there have been many more, a plethora of pro-Palestine protests on college campuses, including students wearing face masks to hide their identities, and instances where Jewish students, hid in a library with protesters brandishing their fists and banging on the doors there. So people feeling really intimidated and targeted at these kinds of events.
That's right. Let's dive in.
Committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing. I apologize for being on free speech on college campuses. I apologize for being a little late. We were having an election in the Republican conference. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Moore, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank the gentleman. We will now begin with opening statements. Chair recognizes himself. Over 6 years ago, we had a hearing about attempts to curtail free speech on college campuses right next door in the Oversight Committee. The hearing touched on emerging threats to the First Amendment, safe spaces, cancel culture, and the targeting of conservative activist student groups. Unfortunately, this was not a fad, and the hostility towards certain points of view, and particularly conservative points of view, has only grown worse. And it's no longer universities just censoring their students. We now know that American universities were working with the federal government to systematically target speech on the internet. Just this week, the committee Republicans released information showing Stanford University worked with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, and the State Department's Global Engagement Center to censor certain speech in the lead up to the 2020 election. Big government, big academia, and big tech all colluding to limit Americans' First Amendment free speech rights. They were targeting jokes, political opinions. Most importantly, they targeted true information. But the speech that was censored all leaned a certain way. What used to be the bastions of free speech and the marketplace of ideas evolved into institutions of activism and suppression. With, quote, safe spaces and free speech zones aimed to protect students from violence, one would think Jewish students would have somewhere to turn as violent pro-Hamas students take to their demonstrations and have harmed students on college campuses. But that's not the case, as we will see in today's hearing. Nearly a 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents, including harassment, vandalism, and assault in the 2 weeks after the Hamas attacks against Israel. We need to be doing more to protect the freedom of expression. We're actually working with the ranking member Nadler on some legislation introduced by one of our colleagues, trying to see if we can put some legislation forward that would help in this area. I want to thank my colleagues, including Representative Virginia Fox, Chairwoman of the Education Workforce Committee, for her important work on these issues. I want to thank Representative Murphy, who is a leader on this topic, has introduced 2 bills to advance free speech on campus, and co-chair of the Campus Free Speech Caucus, Ms. Kamick, for her work and passion for this issue. I also want to recognize Mr. Kiley, one of our members, who introduced a bill just last week that denounced anti-Semitism on college campuses. We look forward to hearing from all our witnesses today. And again, I want to thank you for coming. I now will turn to the ranking member for his opening statement, and then we'll get right to our witnesses.
Thank you,
Mr. I forgot. Well, I'll wait till yours done, then I'll play a short video. We have a short 90-second video. I wanted to show it. We'll play it right now. Let's play it right now. 90-second video. If we can cue that up, we'll play this about what's going on college campuses.
Free speech debates have roiled college campuses with protests against conservative guest speakers.
The fight against conservative speakers on college campuses escalated.
Administrators failed to stop some students from heckling a conservative speaker on campus.
Former college swimmer Riley Gaines says she was assaulted after giving a speech at San Francisco State University.
I understand and share your objections to a speaker whose rhetoric is offensive and clearly intended to shock and provoke.
I don't think they're less able to listen to opposing views. I just think they take less crap.
Students have been making national headlines protesting controversial speakers on campuses across the country.
Is free speech dead on campus?
No, we don't want him to speak. Hopefully we can drown him out.
That's conservative podcaster Michael Knowles being burned in effigy at the University of Pittsburgh.
Your opinions from the bench land as absolute disenfranchisement of their rights.
The president of the University of Pennsylvania, critics say she is not sending a strong enough message against anti-Semitism.
I don't hear people talking about Israeli violence.
Hamas has shifted the balance of power. Hamas has changed the terms of debate.
The Jewish fraternity was hit with a graffiti attack of "The Jews are Nazis."
This is our university.
I think our staff are putting that together, and Chair now recognizes the ranking member, the gentleman from New York, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 1 month ago yesterday, on October 7th, Hamas launched a barbaric attack on the people of Israel. Hamas killed more than 1,400 people and kidnapped 250 more, many of them very old, many of them very young, and some of them American citizens. The attack represents the largest loss of Jewish life in a single day since the conclusion of the Holocaust. Here in the United States, the Jewish community has had little time to mourn. The steady rise in anti-Semitism in this country over the past several years has now reached fever pitch. And few places have had to bear the weight of that trend more than our college and university campuses, where, according to an audit published by the Anti-Defamation League months before the October 7th attack, anti-Semitic activity had increased by 41% in the last year alone. In many ways, the conduct we need to discuss most urgently goes far beyond the title of this hearing, Free Speech on Campus. Jewish students are being physically threatened and have legitimate cause to fear for their safety on campuses across the country.
We are tuned into the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses. This is chaired by Congressman Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. We just heard from Congressman Jerry Nadler. We started with Jim Jordan, who spoke about past hearings about conservatives being censored on college campuses, safe spaces being created on college campuses, cancel culture pervasive on college campuses, and he spoke about American universities, and Stanford worked with actually in 2020 worked with CISA to censor certain speech leading up to the 2020 election.
So all of these highly concerning, but as Jim Jordan said, this is not a fad. This is something that perhaps has deep roots and needs to be brought out into the light. He mentioned the almost 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the 2 weeks following the Hamas attack. That's across the nation, not just within college campuses. But the statistics are quite alarming in terms of the youth and their opinions on this conflict. 32%, according to Quinnipiac, 32% of young people aged 18 to 35 believe that Israel's response to Hamas's attack is not correct. They don't agree with it. So some of this is coming out on college campuses.
Right. Some recent examples of anti-Semitic acts on college campuses. There was a Cornell University student, Patrick Dye, who was recently arrested for allegedly posting threats to kill or harm Jewish men, women, and children. A student at UMass Amherst was arrested for punching a Jewish student and spitting on the Israel flag during a vigil. And a 20-year-old Pennsylvania man reportedly drew 2 swastikas on a college campus there.
And we saw some footage there, which obviously shows some of the things happening there, some intimidation, violence. We've got even online threats going on. Jewish students at Cornell being called the excrement on the face of the earth. That's a quote. Threatened with rape and beheading, and similar events that really recall the Holocaust. So there's a high tension there.
And you mentioned, Jim Jordan mentioning this 400% increase in anti-Semitic acts. That was for the period from October 7th to October 23rd of this year compared to the same period last year. And that report by the Anti-Defamation League also goes into details about whether or not those incidents were linked to Israel. And it says that in 2023, 190 of them were linked to the Israel-Hamas war. Compare that to 2022, where just 4 were related to Israel. So obviously there wasn't a war going on then, but that's a pretty dramatic increase, from 4 to 190.
And we've even sadly seen a death related to this kind of hate crimes, which at least the authorities have not ruled it out as a hate crime, which is a 69-year-old Jewish man has died as a result of injuries that occurred at a pro-Israel rally near Los Angeles over the weekend.
Right, and this also comes as Rashida Tlaib was just censured last night by the Republican-controlled House in a vote 234 to 188 for comments that have been called anti-Semitic. But we'll have more on this hearing after the break.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shenyun.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
Then I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
So please, call or go to helpheart.org now to help save lives.
Thank you so much.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Welcome back. We are tuned into the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses. The chair is Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. We're hoping to hear from some witnesses today. We'll be hearing from 2 students, as well as a recent graduate, as well as Kenneth Marcus, founder and chairman of the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law. This hearing is about the current state of free speech on college campuses, given the rise in anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses.
So let's tune in.
For example, at Cornell University, law enforcement officials arrested a student for making violent threats against Jewish students on an internet message board. These messages included the exhortation that, quote, if you see a Jewish person on campus, follow them home and slit their throats, close quote. In another post, the student threatened to, quote, bring an assault rifle to campus and shoot all you pig Jews, close quote. We are joined today by a student from Cornell University, Amanda Silberstein. Ms. Silberstein, I would just like to say that I am sorry that you and the Jewish community at Cornell have had to endure these threats simply for being who you are. And I am sorry for the fear they have caused you and your fellow students. It is unacceptable, and we must do better. There is no excuse for that kind of violence at any school, against any student. And an academic discussion about the First Amendment is mostly beside the point until we can secure these campuses. I think that most members here on both sides of the aisle would agree, which is not to say, Mr. Chairman, that I do not appreciate your calling this hearing. Congress can help. But first, we have to put aside the political stunts and academic debates and put our money where our mouth is. The Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Education is the federal agency responsible for enforcing the laws that protect students from discrimination. To be clear, the Office for Civil Rights had an enormous amount of work to do long before the attacks of October 7th. The reaction to those attacks in the United States may threaten to overwhelm the agency. That is why the Anti-Defamation League and their partner organization, the Brandeis Center, which is represented here today, have set up a helpline to aid Jewish students navigate the process for filing complaints alleging anti-Semitism during this troubling time. I would like to commend both organizations for their important work, and I encourage Jewish students across the country to make their voices heard. Congress also has an obligation to help. More than that, we have an obligation to offer meaningful help. If we want to get this situation under control, we need to move past debating the various theoretical definitions of the word anti-Semitism. We need to move past the meaningless resolutions on the House floor declaring our feelings about bigotry generally. We need to send assistance where it is urgently needed, and we need to do so today. Earlier this year, the Biden administration outlined a comprehensive national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. For that matter, the administration has also announced a national strategy to counter Islamophobia. These strategies are whole-of-government efforts to combat bigotry in every part of American life that the government can touch. The President has put enforcement of our civil rights laws at the center of these strategies. Long before we could have foreseen the wave of violent anti-Semitism that would sweep across the country, President Biden requested a 27% increase in funding for the Office of Civil Rights. If my Republican colleagues were serious about this issue, they would fully fund that request. Instead, they are fighting to slash the budget of the Office for Civil Rights and other agencies that would keep our children safe. Their promises about anti-Semitism and their actions disconnect in other ways as well. If my Republican colleagues were serious about anti-Semitism, they would have spoken up after the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, where neo-Nazis chanted that, quote, Jews will not replace us. If my Republican colleagues were serious about anti-Semitism, they would have spoken up when President Trump then declared that there were, quote, very fine people on both sides of that rally. If they were serious about anti-Semitism, they would have said something last year when former President Trump shared a meal with Nick Fuentes, a notorious white supremacist and Holocaust denier. And lest you imagine that I am dredging up ancient history, let me remind you that if my Republican colleagues were serious about anti-Semitism, they would not have, just months ago, invited Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to testify in this hearing room after he made appalling claims that Jews appeared to be immune from COVID-19, a nod to the laughable, if not so insidious, conspiracy that the virus was somehow engineered to spare the Jewish community. My friends, for too long, your silence on these matters has been deafening. I'm all for free speech, on campuses and otherwise. That includes the right of my Republican colleagues to say nothing at all about anti-Semitism when silence is politically convenient, even when the former President of the United States takes aim at us directly. But if you mean what you say here today, if you believe that the threats and vitriol that my community faces on college campuses is both unfair and unjust, then I'm asking you to move beyond the pointless gestures and political posturing and help us protect our children. Fully fund the Office for Civil Rights and the administration's efforts to counter anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. Help us get the boots on the ground. We can do better, and our students deserve no less. I thank the witnesses, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. The gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witnesses. Our first witness is Mr. Connor Ogrijic. Mr. Ogrijic is a recent graduate of the University of Buffalo. While a student at Buffalo, he served as the treasurer, vice chair, and chairman of the university's Young Americans for Freedom chapter. He faced threats and protests from fellow students over speakers that his organization invited to campus. Thank you for being with us. Ms. Jasmine Jordan. Ms. Jordan is a student at the University of Iowa. She serves as the chairwoman of the university's Young Americans for Freedom chapter. She has received threats from her fellow students over events that her organization has invited to campus, and their recent pro-Israel vigil was vandalized and disrupted by protesters. We apologize for that, and thank you for doing that.
We are tuning in to the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses. We just wrapped up with comments by Committee Chair Jim Jordan. Actually, he was introducing the witnesses. This hearing is about the current state of free speech on college campuses, given the rise in anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses. We heard from Ranking Member Congressman Jerry Nadler. He mentioned a message board on a college campus where somebody was posting horrible anti-Semitic remarks. He said, one remark said, "If you see a Jew, slit his throat," something like that. Or another one said, "Bring an assault weapon and shoot pig Jews."
Was at Cornell University.
That was at Cornell University. You know, and he apologized for all the fear that comments like these have caused Jewish students.
Yeah, and you know, he also discussed what he saw as a solution here. He was promoting funding the Office of Civil Rights and promoting its efforts within the Education Department but he warned that these new threats through the rise in anti-Semitism could overwhelm this body, and so he also praised the helpline that was set up by the Anti-Defamation League for Jewish students to call when they need help, when they're facing threats.
That's right, and you know, let's just talk about a few of the incidents of anti-Semitism on college campuses. I mentioned before, one at Cornell University, a student named Patrick Dye was arrested recently for posting threats to kill or harm Jewish men, women, and children. Another student was arrested for punching a Jewish student and spitting on the Israel flag.
And we know from the Harvard University event there, earlier on, there were students put out a group statement calling Israel entirely responsible for the war. That was lambasted by university alumni, and the group has not responded to, and said that the group doesn't represent the school's position. So the university has pushed back against that, and there has been other pushback. We see in most recently the Brandeis University in Massachusetts said on Monday that it would no longer recognize the group Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, on its campus because it supports Hamas. That's the group that called for a day of resistance recently, and that incited 200 protests across 200 of its chapters across North America.
I think a lot of people are watching these incidents on college campuses and wondering, where is this coming from? Like, why are our young people doing this? Well, one reason is that going back to the 1980s, Hamas has actually been on U.S. soil influencing things behind the scenes. FBI wiretaps revealed Hamas leaders here in the U.S. talking about collecting funds here, influencing college students as well as politicians. So they've been trying to influence the narrative behind the scenes for decades, and this recent outcropping of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel incidents is one of the repercussions of that, it sounds like, according to this Georgetown University report. We'll have more on the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses after the break.
I'd like to say this is the first time, but there have been others.
How many?
Who can keep track?
You think this is a joke?
Darling, we need answers, and you're gonna give them to us.
Tell us again.
My car broke down. I brought it here.
I got stuck paying an expensive repair bill.
So it's true.
How much, darling?
$2,300.
$2,300.
Well, what was I supposed to do? My transmission was shot.
You pick up your phone and you call CarShield before the car breaks down.
Plans through CarShield cover up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car.
That's right. A plan through CarShield could save you on some criminally high auto repairs, especially if your car is out of warranty. So, call CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company, before a breakdown and save yourself from getting stuck in car repair jail.
Let me guess. You hate saving money.
Who hates saving money?
Apparently you do.
All you had to do was call CarShield. And you could have protected yourself against expensive repairs.
Yeah, and then my price will go up the minute I file a claim.
Shut up! CarShield has the price locked in.
For as long as you cover your car.
I guess I should have called CarShield?
It's about time you said something that made sense.
Now you know what you need to do next time.
Bet he'll call CarShield now.
So can I go? Or...
Don't get handcuffed paying expensive auto repairs. Call now and get the CarShield guarantee. Your price will never go up and your coverage will never go down as long as you cover your car. In just minutes, you could have a plan that covers up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car. Don't wait until it's too late. Get CarShield's best coverage yet. Call 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729.
Hi everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. You know, we're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
Welcome back. We are tuned into the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses, chaired by Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio. This hearing on free speech on college campuses comes as anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses have been rising, and students are saying that this is an expression of free speech in some cases, but the whole question of what anti-Semitism is on the table in this conversation. I mean, people are questioning, is being against Israel itself anti-Semitic? And some people would argue yes, some argue no.
And whether it's okay whether the universities prioritizing free speech allows for the kind of violent rhetoric that this discussion is leading to. That's also on the table, but yeah.
That's right. So let's dive back into the hearing.
Mr. Kenneth Mayorkas. Mr. Mayorkas is the founder and chairman of the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law. He previously served as the Assistant Secretary of Education for Civil Rights, the staff director of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. We appreciate your work, Mr. Mayorkas, and thank you for being with us. Professor Pamela Nadell. Professor Nadell holds the Patrick Clendon Chair in Women's and Gender History and is the director of the Jewish Studies program at American University. She has taught a variety of courses on Judaism and Jewish and women's history and has published several related books. We appreciate you being here, Doctor. And Ms. Stacy Burdett. Ms. Burdett is a public policy strategist and consultant. She has previously served as the Vice President for Government Relations, Advocacy, and Community Engagement at the Anti-Defamation League and as the Director of Government and External Relations at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. We welcome all our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You may be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. And I think we'll just go like we did. We'll start with Mr. Buttigieg, and then we'll move right down the line. So you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and members of the committee.
Committee will be in order. Committee will be in order. We appreciate people being here, but the committee has to be in order. If you, we will remove every single person who disrupts the committee. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and members of the committee. My name is Connor Buttigieg, and it is an honor to bring my experiences before you today. Although I had hoped...
Speaking up against genocide become anti-Semitism. How is that the same?
Committee will be in order. Again.
Although I had hoped that my arrival to higher ed...
Here's the hearing for Palestinian students. Palestinian students, please stop. Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism. Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism. Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism. Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism. Palestinians deserve the right to not be genocided. Free Gaza! Free Gaza! Free Gaza!
Mr. Buttigieg, we'll keep trying.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and members of the committee.
Palestinians deserve to speak on the genocide of their families.
All right, sit down. You be
Palestinian students deserve to speak on the genocide of their families. Stop silencing Palestinian students. Stop silencing Palestinian students. Stop silencing Palestinian students. They're speaking on the genocide.
Who are displaying membership in that group in your name. These people just being removed or arrested.
Gentleman is recognized.
It is an honor to bring my experiences.
Palestinian students should not be censored. You want to talk about putting money where your mouth is? There are 10,000, over 10,000 Gazans dead and more buried, half of whom are under the age of 18. And you're going to send money and talk about this? Where are the anti-Zionist Jews in this room? Nowhere. So you are not offering a plurality of opinion. You are offering partisanship. And you are offering murder to more Gazans. Free Palestine!
My name is Connor Ogrejock, and it is an honor to bring my experiences before you today. Although I had hoped that my arrival to higher education would mark the arrival to a bastion of free speech, many of my firsthand experiences of freedom of speech violations at the University at Buffalo came during my membership of UB's chapter of Young Americans for Freedom. Two of the most prominent examples of freedom of speech bias that I witnessed at the university each came in the form of speaker events hosted by my chapter.
We are tuned into the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses, hosted by the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. This hearing is about free speech on college campuses amid rising anti-Semitism on college campuses. And the irony here is that, you know, we're having this hearing on free speech, and we didn't hear anything from the witness just now, because I think it was 5 or 6 protesters there in the audience stood up and in protest of Israel's retaliation against Gaza. You know, one protester saying 10,000 people have been killed. Those numbers of deaths come from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. And Hamas, of course, is the terror organization that committed the just horrible terror attack on Israel on October 7th, murdering 1,300 Israeli citizens, most of them citizens, taking over 200 hostages. And we heard instances of men, women, and children being brutally killed that day.
And of course, knowing that Hamas does want to annihilate Israel, and we can also see that Israel is saying that it wants to put an end to Hamas. We heard from the protesters here naming Israel's actions genocide. We do want to put forward that Israel has been known to take many precautionary steps to try to be very specific in their targeting, in their retaliation, sending out flyers of warning, sending text messages and calling civilians within Gaza before attacks take place, trying to alert people so that they can leave. Of course, some of those people are prevented from leaving by Hamas, and Hamas also, we know, places the targets that Israel would target within civilian hotspots like hospitals, like we saw some tunnels underneath children's playgrounds and things like that. So it's a very complex situation, but genocide is a very debatable and perhaps incorrect casting of this.
Right, and you know, Israel has a very powerful military. If they wanted to wipe out the people of Gaza, they could probably do it. However, they have surrounded and are now going street by street through Gaza City, picking out the terrorists, and as opposed to just blanket committing genocide like we saw during World War II, the genocide committed by the Nazis against the Jewish people. So it's almost, people who, a lot of people take the term genocide very seriously, and this is almost an abuse of the term genocide itself.
Yeah, and especially considering what we're seeing here is all of this resurgence of this effort essentially to destroy Israel, which is the home of the Jewish people and the only home of the Jewish state. So that is essentially a kind of resurgence of what we saw in World War II. So we're about to So we did hear from Conor Buttigieg just very briefly there. He spoke about some of the free speech violations, or started to speak about those. But we will hopefully tune back into that soon. Stay tuned.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, no full bellies. All around the world, parents are struggling to feed their children. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. COVID, conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we're fed up. Fed up with the fact that hunger robs children of their childhood. Fed up with the lack of progress. Fed up with the injustice. Help us brighten the lives of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients. Prevent children from dropping out of school. Support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give before December 31st can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Childhood without food is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org today.
Thank you for staying with us. We're tuning into the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses. This hearing comes as there's a rise in anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses, as well as a 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents for the 2 weeks after the October 7th attack by Hamas right here in the U.S. Let's tune back in.
In spring of 2022, as vice chair of my chapter, I had the opportunity to assist with hosting Lieutenant Colonel Alan West at UB, an event which was preceded by delays in the signing of our contract and a forced venue change, which was exposed by a Freedom of Information request. However, the most striking action taken against us followed Lieutenant Colonel West's speech, which had included a discussion of race in America and accounts from his decorated past. When the floor was opened to a question and answer session, student protesters shouted from their seats before the audiovisual employees from UB's Student Association, the student government, cut powers to the event's microphones and speakers, ending the session. Confrontations continued upon the exit from the event, and once outside, as you just saw in the video before the opening statements, chapter members were chased by a 100-person mob across campus. What that footage did not show was the former chapter chair being forced into a bathroom where she called 911 for rescue, and another board member being physically attacked. With silence from the university and charges not pressed by the Erie County District Attorney's Office, I've since been left to consider the precedent this sets for those who plan to protest future events on campus. Though I may not be qualified to determine what constitutes adequate evidence in the eyes of the justice system, if those who were involved in this mob were able to resort to fear tactics and violence without consequence, what is keeping a pattern of this despicable behavior from being set and executed repeatedly? This thought remained on my mind throughout the planning of a March 2023 event that I hosted as chairman featuring Michael Knowles. This event would grow to gain more pushback than any event on campus in the previous 4 years and provide the most clear-cut examples of freedom of speech violations. This pushback included delays in contract signing from UB Student Association that deviated far from their outlined standard course of action, condemnation of the event by a local New York State senator and multiple Western New York-based organizations, a circulated petition constructed by 3 university professors calling for the cancellation of the lecture, which gained thousands of student signatures, a forced venue change orchestrated not only by university administration this time, but voted on by a SUNY council, a multitude of threats and torn literature, and even a tweet from Governor Kathy Hochul on the day of the event calling comments from Michael dehumanizing. The decry of this event garnered a responding statement from University President Satish Tripathi explaining that the Constitution protects speech on campus, quote, no matter how noxious the content, end quote. Based on the actions taken by faculty and the rhetoric used by Tripathi, I cannot name more clear examples of evidence that demonstrate the case of a university concerned only with following the letter of the law rather than uplifting conservative values to a level equivalent with the values of the left, which are often celebrated in the university's own Distinguished Speaker Series. Unfortunately, this was forced to extend into a federal lawsuit with representation by Alliance Defending Freedom once our YAF chapter was banned from campus as the result of a new national affiliation ban by the student government. Though I graduated in the previous spring semester and am no longer able to engage in discourse with opposing students, I am fortunate to still have friends on campus, including current YAF board members who can. Something that has particularly concerned me recently, both on campus and off, is the outward support for Hamas under the guise of support for Palestinian civilians. I will not generalize entire groups. However, an unsettling number of students who appeared both in a 300-person pro-Palestine march on campus, as well as a protest against a pro-Israel speaker, did not solely speak out in support of Palestinian civilians. Rather, these students stated their support for Hamas directly. I would like to be clear. Regardless of background, I do not wish for civilian death. Support for Hamas is not support for Palestinian civilians. It is the opposite. Support for Hamas is support for a terrorist organization, and this must not be misconstrued. Regardless of what side of the political aisle you reside on, it should be common ground that no student deserves to be threatened, mistreated, or silenced on campus due to their personal beliefs. Conservative students currently face a relentless uphill battle for representation on campus, and though we may seek support from outside groups and legislators such as yourselves, we will not accept the label of victims. Standing up for your beliefs will never be a waste of time, and as Americans, we hold this in our hearts. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan, you are recognized.
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and the members of the committee. My name is Jasmine Jordan, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. I was raised in the church and homeschooled from preschool through 5th grade. Both of these were crucial in shaping my early upbringing and my worldview. They gave me the strong foundation of moral beliefs and values that the Constitution was founded on. Lessons like iron sharpens iron, be a leader, not a follower, and so help me God are ingrained into every aspect of my character. As I progressed through the public school environment, this strong moral compass guided me throughout my journey, and I carried it with me to college. In spring 2022, I joined Iowa Young Americans for Freedom when I discovered that this organization aligned with the Christian conservative values instilled in me by my church and family. The more involved I became in the club, the more I discovered that the playing field for freedom of speech on college campuses was not equalized. The first time I noticed this was when Iowa YAF hosted Kellyanne Conway as a speaker. In response, I was doxxed in a group chat of over 800 students and was falsely labeled as a Nazi, a token, a white supremacist, and a bigot. Some individuals even expressed that I made them uncomfortable and feared that I might commit a hate crime against them simply because I am Black and hold conservative principles. These students believe that if you are conservative, you are hateful, support oppression, and only want to benefit straight white men, even though such beliefs are untrue. When we hosted Lieutenant Colonel Allen West speak on campus last year, he spoke on the topic of debunking diversity, equity, and inclusion and proved that America is not racist.
We are tuned in to the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses, chaired by Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. We just heard from Jasmine Jordan, a current student at University of Iowa, but we started off with Connor Ogrijic, a former student at the University of Buffalo. We got to hear from him in this segment, in the last segment that we tuned into the hearing. There were protesters that stood up and started shouting slogans about Palestine the entire time, and we couldn't hear anything from Connor.
Right. Both of these students and former student spoke about a similar experience of having their sense of free speech collapsed, having pushed back against their own conservative values on campus. Ogrijic pointing to a Michael Knowles event, which received a lot of pushback from students at the time, but also not much support in terms of their right to speak on campus from staff members. So he spoke about a kind of culture that he identified as the university not valuing conservative values being heard at the same level as progressive values being heard on campus.
And he mentioned, one incident where a speaker was there to speak and students cut power to the event's microphones. Some of the members of this chapter he was involved in were chased by a 100-person mob. There was a board member who was physically attacked.
Another one felt compelled to call 911 after she had to lock herself in a bathroom from that protest, from the threats of the people chasing them, as he said. And we also heard from Jasmine Jordan, and similarly feeling ostracized, having a lot of attacks and being cast really as an outsider, as someone who was dangerous for having her views, as she put it. But there is a lot of pushback as well. So this hearing is a way to open up the conversation about what's going on and have these voices heard. But we also know that, for example, major law firms, many of the major law firms have published a letter saying that they will not hire anti-Semitic graduates. They do not want people who are okay with that kind of discrimination in their workplace. We've seen the House of Representatives recently passing a resolution that condemns this kind of conduct on college campuses. So there's a few things happening to really turn the tide in some ways.
Right. Yeah, and Brandeis University banned a pro-Palestine group. We know that the president of Cornell University actually was working with notified the FBI about these anti-Semitic incidents. There was one student there on Cornell University named Patrick Dye. I mentioned him earlier. He was arrested for posting threats to kill or harm Jewish men, women, and children. This comes as with a 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the 2 weeks following the October 7th attack by Hamas. That's according to the Anti-Defamation League.
Right, and we do know that the White House has been sending more law enforcement support to college campuses since this uptick in anti-Semitic events. And the protests themselves are intense as well, as we've just heard. But some other events, just to add to the record here, we've seen a Columbia professor, Joseph Massad, saying that the scenes of Palestinian, what he called resistance fighters, were awesome. And we've even seen, so there's been staff members at various universities making these kinds of comments. So this paints the picture that the pressure and the climate is changing in many different aspects.
That's right. And at the same time, Rashida Tlaib was censured just yesterday in a 234 to 188 vote for a video she posted on X that included the phrase, "from the river to the sea." And this is in reference to the saying, "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." It refers to Palestinians gaining control of Israel. People talk about a two-state solution being the answer to the Israeli-Palestine conflict, where you have Palestine and Israel, they each have their own state, and there's peace. Well, this saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, refers to the idea of there being no Israel and only Palestine, where Israel once was. And
yeah, so that's worth considering when we look back to the beginning of this war. And of course, many of the experts we've been speaking to, we do ask, okay, so why do you think this is happening now? And it's not just this conflict. Some of the people we spoke to say that perhaps this kind of sentiment was there all along, and now it's just flaring up because of this war, but perhaps it was there all along. We do know that there has been a long-standing, perhaps ideological conflict between, Israel and many of the other nations surrounding it. So there's that historic context as well.
That's right. And now this concludes our coverage of the House Judiciary hearing on free speech on college campuses. Thank you for tuning in. We'll have more news after the break.
I'd like to say this is the first time, but there have been others.
How many?
Who can keep track?
You think this is a joke?
Darling, we need answers, and you're gonna give them to us.
Tell us again.
My car broke down. I brought it here.
I got stuck paying an expensive repair bill.
So it's true.
How much, darling?
$2,300.
$2,300.
What was I supposed to do? My transmission was shot.
You pick up your phone and you call CarShield before the car breaks down.
Plans through CarShield cover up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car.
That's right. A plan through CarShield could save you on some criminally high auto repairs, especially if your car is out of warranty. So, call CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company, before a breakdown and save yourself from getting stuck in car repair jail.
Let me guess. You hate saving money.
Who hates saving money?
Apparently you do.
All you had to do was call CarShield. And you could have protected yourself against expensive repairs.
Yeah, and then my price will go up the minute I file a claim.
Shut up! CarShield has the price locked in.
For as long as you cover your car.
I guess I should have called CarShield?
It's about time you said something that made sense.
Now you know what you need to do next time.
Bet he'll call CarShield now.
So can I go? Or
Don't get handcuffed paying expensive auto repairs. Call now and get the CarShield guarantee. Your price will never go up and your coverage will never go down as long as you cover your car. In just minutes, you could have a plan that covers up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car. Don't wait until it's too late. Get CarShield's best coverage yet. Call 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729.
Are you ready to help your family get prepared for the unexpected?
Everyone in? Here we go!
Ladybug and Cat Noir know how important it is to be ready. Because you never know when Hawkmoth is going to strike, or a disaster will hit.
Go, Rose!
And you don't need miraculous powers. Just put those planning skills you already have to good use. Know who to call, decide on a safe meeting location, and create an emergency preparedness kit. Make a plan that will help you and your family be ready when emergencies happen. Ready Kids can help.
I'm coming to save you!
Get started at ready.gov/kids.
Up next, Ivanka Trump is in court, now testifying in the New York civil fraud case. State Attorney General Letitia James, who brought the case, comments on her court hearing.
And DHS Secretary and HHS Secretary testify in Congress over funding for their departments. How do they justify President Biden's emergency funding request?
Voters took to the polls yesterday, deciding on abortion access and marijuana legalization in one state, and governors and legislators are in others. We have the results and analysis on some key races.
Cutting Pete Buttigieg's salary to $1. The House passed a bill attempting to slash the transportation secretary's pay. Find out why.
Are activist investors influencing your retirement account? We learn about the controversial money management approach that could make it more difficult to retire.
More than 200 hospitals nationwide have closed in less than 20 years. And more than 600 hospitals are at risk of closing in the next few years. An award-winning journalist sheds light on the hospital crisis. Former President Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, is appearing in court today. She arrived this morning at a New York courtroom for the civil fraud case involving the Trump Organization.
Ivanka Trump was an executive in her father's business organization. She became an unpaid senior advisor in the Trump White House.
Ivanka Trump's turn to testify comes after brothers Eric, Donald Trump Jr., and their father have all testified. But unlike her father and her brothers, she's no longer a defendant in the civil trial.
The case filed by New York Attorney General Letitia James accuses the Trump Organization of inflating asset values to dupe lenders.
James commented on Ivanka Trump's court appearance before the trial.
She will attempt today to distance herself from the company. But unfortunately, the facts will reveal that, in fact, she was very much involved. We uncovered the scheme, and she benefited from it personally.
Should the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Health and Human Services be getting more funding? The heads of the two departments are testifying before Congress today over President Biden's funding request.
Ensuring the safety and security of the American people must be more than just a talking point. We owe those who protect our country better. We owe them the funding, resources, and support needed to do their dangerous and difficult jobs. We owe them this supplemental funding package.
Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas advocated for Biden's emergency funding request before the Senate Appropriations Committee.
But lawmakers questioned him over the border crisis, asking for explanations for the record numbers of illegal border crossings.
Biden's funding also proposes additional border agents, asylum officers, and law enforcement at the southern border. Mayorkas said this is needed to expand the department's capacity for safe and humane border enforcement.
The request also proposes over $22 billion for the Department of Health and Human Services. HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra argued that the money is needed to ensure access to child care and combat the opioid epidemic.
The National Institutes of Health has a new director. Cancer surgeon Dr. Monica Bertagnolli was confirmed by the Senate yesterday in a bipartisan vote. In a statement, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra praised Bertagnolli as a powerful advocate for cancer patients. President Biden nominated Bertagnolli for the position in May. She previously led the National Cancer Institute.
Voters cast ballots yesterday to choose governors in Kentucky and Mississippi, deciding legislative control in Virginia and New Jersey, and determining if the Ohio state constitution should enshrine access to abortion. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the latest results.
Republicans and Democrats were tuning in to see if the results in key races would provide insight into the upcoming 2024 elections. Starting out with the gubernatorial contests, Democrat Governor Andy Beshear won re-election in Kentucky, defeating Republican State Attorney General Daniel Cameron. That's in a state that voted for former President Donald Trump by more than 25 percentage points in 2020. A July poll conducted by Morning Consult rated Beshear the nation's most popular Democratic governor. Cameron had repeatedly criticized Beshear for vetoing transgender-related bills, including one that banned cross-sex procedures on minors and another that prevented men who identify as women from participating in women's sports. In Mississippi, Republican Governor Tate Reeves won his bid for re-election against Democrat Brandon Presley, a second cousin of singer Elvis Presley. Reeves had consistently led the polls in the deep red state, which has not elected a Democrat as governor in 20 years. Over to the legislature, all 40 seats in Virginia's Senate and 100 seats in the House of Delegates were up for grabs. One of the House of Delegates races includes a candidate embroiled in a sex scandal. Democrat Susanna Gibson allegedly engaged in explicit acts with her husband on a pornographic website. Democrats held control of the Senate and won control of the House in those races. The Democrats' sweep thwarts the possibility of a new 15-week abortion ban that Republicans had vowed to pass had they won control of the legislature. In New Jersey, Republicans were fighting for control of either legislative chamber in the deep blue state, where all seats in the General Assembly and Senate are in play. Republicans have gained ground since 2021 when they flipped 7 seats and campaigned on issues ranging from the economy to parental rights. Some races have yet to be called, but the Washington Post reports that Democrats held on to enough seats to thwart Republican attempts to take control of one or both chambers for the first time in over 20 years. Over to a pair of Ohio ballot measures. Ohioans voted to enshrine abortion access in the state constitution. That will nullify a 6-week abortion limit signed into law by Republican Governor Mike DeWine. Voters also approved a ballot measure legalizing marijuana for recreational use. Turning to the courts, Democratic candidate Daniel McCaffrey won the open seat on Pennsylvania's Supreme Court, defeating Republican Carolyn Carluccio for the 10-year position. His victory widens the Democratic majority on the state's highest court to 5-2. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Now let's take a look at the results of 2 mayoral races. In Houston, 2 candidates are heading for a runoff. Meanwhile, Philadelphia last night elected a new mayor, the 100th mayor in the city's history. The 2 candidates heading for a runoff in Houston are both Democrats, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and State Senator John Whitmire.
The race is dominated by issues of crime, a crumbling infrastructure, and potential budget shortfalls.
Whitmire has been part of the Texas legislature for 5 decades now. He introduced tough-on-crime policies while also casting himself as a reformer. Both Jackson Lee and Whitmire dominated the open mayoral race for months, leaving 15 other candidates behind.
But neither got over 50% of the vote, which is necessary to avoid a runoff. The runoff will be held on December 9th.
Meanwhile, Philadelphia elects Democrat Sherelle Parker as the city's 100th mayor.
At her victory celebration on Tuesday, she said she's making public health and safety her #1 priority, adding that to do so, she'll need the help of the White House.
She says Philadelphia can't be successful without an immense amount of support from the White House and Congress.
Reducing the salary of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. The House passed a bill that would basically leave Buttigieg without a salary. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced the bill.
My amendment uses the Holman Rule to reduce the salary of Secretary Pete Buttigieg to $1. Pete Buttigieg has failed to serve the American people as the Secretary of Transportation. He has been busy calling roads racist, enforcing equity action plans, and implementing climate change initiatives, rather than strengthening our nation's transportation and infrastructure systems.
Greene introduced the bill as an amendment to the 2024 Financial Services and General Government Appropriations Act. Buttigieg has come under fire from Republicans for allegedly not doing his job.
Also for using government-mandated private jets for his trips, while at the same time advocating for rules to combat climate change. Greene's bill, however, is not expected to pass the Senate.
The House has voted to censure Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, a punishment one step below expulsion. The 234 to 188 final vote came after some Democrats sided with Republicans to pass the measure. Representative Rich McCormick moved to censure Tlaib for what he called her anti-Semitic rhetoric and for calling for the destruction of the State of Israel. Tlaib said she will not be silenced, and her criticisms were directed toward the Israeli government. She said, quote, "The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent."
Many opponents of the censure in both parties cited free speech as their objection and warned of the precedent this censure could set. Tlaib becomes the 26th person ever to be censured by the chamber and the second person this year. Tlaib will have the formal reprimand read out loud to her on the House floor.
And in New York City, a public defender has resigned following backlash on social media.
She was caught on camera tearing down posters of Israeli hostages held by Hamas.
New York County Defender Services confirmed that Victoria Ruiz, who had been a public defender, has resigned.
An account called Stop Antisemitism posted a video of Ruiz on X this past Sunday. In it, she was seen tearing down posters of Israeli children kidnapped by Hamas.
The account tagged New York City County Defender Services and wrote, "It is absolutely unacceptable for someone with such bias and hate to serve in your office."
The New York County Defender Services released a statement saying they strongly condemn Ruiz's actions.
Activist money managers influencing retirement accounts. A House hearing on ESG investing exposed the threat this investment approach poses to retirees and America's savers. We speak with Jason Isaac, director of Life Powered, about his testimony there yesterday. Jason Isaac, thank you for joining us. You opened your statement at the House hearing on ESG yesterday by saying you live a high carbon life. What does that mean, and why did you lead with that?
Well, I like to tell people that I live a high carbon lifestyle, and I think the rest of the world should too. It's truly where you have economic prosperity and environmental leadership. You look at countries like the United States, we're world leaders in economic prosperity and world leaders in clean air. We've reduced pollution nearly 80% over the last 5 decades. And we're also number one when it comes to access to clean and safe drinking water. And places around the world that have a low carbon lifestyle are places like Malawi and Ethiopia that are net zero and that have deaths from waterborne illnesses and just really atrocious living conditions that we take for granted here in the United States.
Now, that hearing was about the threat ESG investing poses to Americans' retirement accounts. Describe this threat to us.
Well, when you consider other factors besides return on investment, you're threatening the retirement and the savings of not only just people that may be doing their own personal investments, but really what you're seeing is this manipulation of the market by large financial institutions that are using pension dollars that have been entrusted with them by states and the federal government that are for firefighters and for police officers and other first responders and teachers and state and government employees that may not recognize that their tax dollar or their pension dollars, their retirements are being weaponized against American energy producers and to the benefit of China. So it's this threat to their retirement savings in the name of virtue signaling, which I called very expensive during the committee yesterday.
Maybe you can back up a little bit and explain for us what is ESG to begin with, ESG investing.
To start, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And to really make it as simple as possible, it's social credit scoring for businesses and sometimes, in the cases of some people, certain individuals. So you get this score from this arbitrary, it could be a financial institution, it could be a bank, it could be a myriad of other things, but there's no set determination of what this score is. And as I mentioned yesterday during the hearing, there are Chinese companies that have the China Coal Company in particular has a higher ESG rating than certain American businesses that just own real estate assets. So it's completely arbitrary, but it's essentially social credit scoring for businesses.
How does that happen? That kind of where these Chinese coal companies get this good score?
Well, it's as I mentioned, it's completely arbitrary. But what it is you'll have certain institutions. There's a lot of nonprofits that are driving ESG. They're forcing the implementation of ESG within certain companies, and then those companies have their compensation tied to it. As I mentioned during the hearing, 75% of S&P 500 companies executives are tied to ESG. So that means that they have to implement the favored environmental programs within their business, which essentially means decarbonization, which doesn't do anything to mitigate a changing climate. It just increases the cost of everything. We've seen this at Exxon, where they've had to implement and agree to align with the Paris Accord. That's not the law of the land in the United States. And it's contrary to the best interests of the shareholders, the employees of Exxon, and unfortunately it's pushing production overseas to places that produce things less responsibly than we do here in the United States.
And Jason, what can lawmakers do to protect retirees' retirement accounts from ESG investing like this?
Well, at the federal level, what they can do is they can ensure that those federal programs don't invest in ESG first and foremost, that they invest with fiduciary responsibility and focused on returns on investment. And what has happened in Texas is the Pension Protection Act, as I like to call it, is essentially tells financial institutions if you're going to boycott, divest, or sanction fossil fuels, which are pretty important to the Texas economy, then you're no longer welcome to do business with the state of Texas. West Virginia, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee, other states have followed suit with that legislation. And then to date, we've got about 24 states that have passed policies modeled on work that I've done and have been doing over the last couple of years to tell pension fund managers to invest with fiduciary duty first and foremost.
All right. Jason Isaac, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
When we come back, firefighters put out a massive blaze at a historic wooden hangar in California. The Orange County Fire Authority continues to investigate the cause.
Last quarter, U.S. credit card balances saw the largest year-over-year increase in over 2 decades. NTD Business host Don Ma explains what this says about consumers.
I'd like to say this is the first time, but there have been others.
How many?
Who can keep track?
You think this is a joke?
Darling, we need answers, and you're gonna give them to us.
Tell us again.
My car broke down. I brought it here.
I got stuck paying an expensive repair bill.
So it's true.
How much, darling?
$2,300.
$2,300.
What was I supposed to do? My transmission was shot.
You pick up your phone and you call CarShield before the car breaks down.
Plans through CarShield cover up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car.
That's right. A plan through CarShield could save you on some criminally high auto repairs, especially if your car is out of warranty. So, call CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company, before a breakdown and save yourself from getting stuck in car repair jail.
Let me guess. You hate saving money.
Who hates saving money?
Apparently you do.
All you had to do was call CarShield. And you could have protected yourself against expensive repairs.
Yeah, and then my price will go up the minute I file a claim.
Shut up! CarShield has the price locked in.
For as long as you cover your car.
I guess I should have called CarShield?
It's about time you said something that made sense.
Now you know what you need to do next time.
Bet he'll call CarShield now.
So can I go? Or
Don't get handcuffed paying expensive auto repairs. Call now and get the CarShield guarantee. Your price will never go up and your coverage will never go down as long as you cover your car. In just minutes, you could have a plan that covers up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car. Don't wait until it's too late. Get CarShield's best coverage yet. Call 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729. 800-965-0729.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call 800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now. 800-494-1562.
Amid all of the troubling events in the world and here at home, here's one you might not have heard of. America's hospital system is in crisis. That's the message of a new movie coming out Friday on Epic TV.
Their motto is we care, they don't care.
He died in the ambulance.
Yes.
Almost 200 hospitals in America have closed
in just the last few years.
You die. That's exactly what happened.
911, what's your emergency?
Hospitals have long been a place of confidence and trust.
I'll go back this far. Politics killed the hospital.
But what happens when hospitals across America close their doors?
All the good providers, the surgeons and so on, left.
It's a death in the community. Having two hospitals and all of a sudden having none.
Very scary. We're in a crisis here, aren't we?
Without question, we're at a crisis point.
And earlier I spoke with the director of Flatline, America's Hospital Crisis, Steve Gruber, for more insights. Steve, welcome to our show. Thanks so much for coming on. You've said that we're facing a true emergency when it comes to health care in the U.S. What have you uncovered in that sense?
Well, it's remarkable, actually, Steph, if you look, about 200 hospitals in America, many of them rural hospitals, have closed in just the last 10 or 15 years. You look at the future, though, you look at today, 600 hospitals are in financial trouble today. 200 of those hospitals could go out of business tomorrow, and nobody would be surprised. And it's a combination of problems. You've got bad government policies. You've got big corporations coming in and buying groups of hospitals and deciding which ones remain open, which ones close. You've got insurance companies. You've got a lot of different factors and different pressures. And I don't think people realize this. The hospital in your area, especially if you're somewhere in a rural area, could close, and it would come without warning, creating a real healthcare crisis in America. And
creating many tragedies, as we will see in your documentary. You're out there on the ground speaking to people all across the nation. What did you discover in terms of, have you got a specific story, one compelling story that you came across?
Well, certainly there are a lot of stories. We went to 3 different places. Massillon, Ohio, a town of about 300,000. Kenner, Missouri, a town of about 12,000. And Ducktown, Tennessee, a town of about 1,000, but it served as a regional rural hospital. What we found is when the hospital closes, you lose access to the emergency room. So we talked to one woman who, her husband had a heart attack in Kenner, Missouri in 2016, but the hospital was open then. He went to the emergency room. He was fine. 1 year after the hospital closed in 2018, he had another heart attack. The problem is the ER was now 45 minutes away. He didn't make the ambulance ride. And she's quite convinced that, yes, that cost him his life, but it also cost her her job, her daughter-in-law, because they all worked at that hospital. That's another compounding factor of these hospitals closing. Good jobs go away.
And did you discover any consistent or common themes across the communities that lost these hospitals?
Well, they lose a sense of identity, really. A lot of these hospitals are a foundational point in a community. It's where, it's where they go to have their children. It's where they go in case of emergency. They cut their arm, they fall down, they skin their knee. It's where they take old people so they can die in dignity in their hometown. So it really is it's a rock in these communities that's taken away, so they seem untethered. A lot of these communities feel like they've lost their identity. It was described by one gentleman in Ohio as a death in the community. And I see how he feels that way because people go there, families go there. Generations go to the same hospital and are born in the same hospital and have events in the same hospital, both great and bad at the same time. So it's a foundational part of a community that's gone.
Right, all building their identity through all of those oftentimes very intense moments that you face in a hospital. What do you hope, what kind of awareness do you hope this documentary will raise, and what do you think can be done now after all of your research?
Well, there are so many complicating factors here, Steph, that you have to look at. First of all, awareness. People are not aware that this is happening. People are not aware that the hospital in their community could close. I mean, when do you think about a hospital? If you don't work there, when do you actually think about it? And ambulance services, too, which are also going bankrupt, which we cover in this documentary as well. You don't think about the hospital until you're having a heart attack or a stroke or somebody you care about's been in a car wreck. You don't think about that until you need it. And when you pick up the phone and there's nobody there, that's when that realization really hits home. And it's not just that. It's also, if you take the hospital and move it 40 minutes away, because this hospital closes, the next one's 45 minutes away, well, people are going to get mammograms or colonoscopies. They don't go get routine testing and diagnostics because they don't want to take a day off from work and spend all that time to drive, 45 minutes or an hour and wait over there. So they don't go. That also causes problems. It's not just the heart attack. It's the failure to diagnose cancer or diabetes or other illness that often ends badly for these people.
Yeah. And Steve, documentaries often inspire change. What kind of action do you hope will come of this?
Well, I certainly am looking for awareness here. I want people to be aware that today's 600 hospitals in America are financially in trouble, possibly insolvent, on the verge of bankruptcy. I want people to be aware of that. I want them to ask questions in their community. Hey, how is our hospital? What's the ambulance service like? This year alone, A dozen ambulance services just in the state of New York have closed their doors permanently. These are things, if the hospital's closed, that's one thing, but if the ambulance isn't there to take you at all, what difference does it make? I want people to be aware, Steph, that there's a problem, a healthcare crisis in America that's silent because people don't see it, and they need to know, and they need to start asking questions.
For sure, and you can catch that documentary, Flatline, on Epic TV. 10th of November, it's coming out. Be sure to watch it. Thank you so much, Steve Gruber. Great to speak with you.
Thank you.
And again, to watch or learn more about Steve's fascinating documentary, you can visit flatlinefilm.com. This Epic original documentary will premiere on Epic TV on November 10th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to Epic TV to access this and other original documentaries, news and lifestyle shows, movies, and other great content. Next, San Diego is seeing a huge number of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. Customs and Border Protection says 230,000 people have arrived this year alone.
A new facility in San Diego County will coordinate travel for illegal immigrants and process asylum claims. Republicans have criticized the Biden administration for what they say are lax immigration and border policies.
The border crisis has come under further scrutiny in the wake of the Hamas terror attacks on Israel October 7th. According to the House Committee on Homeland Security, CPB reported 2.4 million encounters at the southern border in fiscal year 2023.
The agency apprehended 169 individuals on the terror watch list.
At least 1.7 million known gotaways have eluded authorities since 2021. And the massive fire that broke out at a historic wooden hangar in California is finally under control. The Orange County Fire Authority gave the update.
It's one of 2 air hangars built during World War II at the former Marine Corps Air Station, Tustin. Movies and TV shows such as Pearl Harbor, Star Trek, and Austin Powers were filmed there.
At one point, fire crews used a helicopter to help extinguish the blaze. Fire officials said one of the challenges they faced was the lack of water on the property.
Crews used a long hose to pump water from hydrants on nearby streets. The hangar almost burned down completely, leaving only scorched side of the structure standing.
Authorities are still investigating the cause of the blaze.
A Nevada judge has set a June 3rd date for the murder trial of the only defendant ever charged in the murder of Tupac Shakur. A former gang leader is accused of killing the rap and hip-hop icon in Las Vegas in 1996. Dwayne Keefe Davis made a brief court appearance Tuesday. He has pleaded not guilty and remains in a Las Vegas jail.
The suspect is originally from Compton, California. He was arrested on September 29 outside a Las Vegas area home.
In a 2019 tell-all memoir, Davis says he orchestrated the drive by shooting that killed Shakur. Davis is the only person still alive who was in the vehicle.
Shakur was just 25 years old when he was killed.
Turning to another trial of the man who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi last year in his San Francisco home. Jury selection is now complete. The federal trial of David DePape begins tomorrow. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California, Paul Pelosi on the witness list, but his wife Nancy Pelosi is not. The suspect is charged with assaulting an immediate family member of a federal official and attempted kidnapping of a federal official. He also faces state-level charges. The trial date for that will be set later this month. The U.S. is sanctioning 13 members of Mexico's powerful Sinaloa cartel. In addition, 4 Mexico-based firms accused of trafficking fentanyl and other drugs into the U.S. have also been sanctioned. The measures cut them off from the U.S. banking system and freeze their U.S. assets. It also eliminates their ability to work with Americans.
Fentanyl is the deadliest drug in the U.S. today. According to the CDC, overdose deaths from the powerful opioid increased more than 7-fold from 2015 to 2021.
There have been more than 100,000 fatal overdoses annually since 2020. About 2/3 of those deaths are related to fentanyl.
Mexico and China are the primary sources for fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances. Nearly all the precursor chemicals needed to make fentanyl come from China.
Last quarter, the U.S. credit card balances saw the largest year-over-year increase in over 2 decades.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York says credit card balances soared by a staggering $154 billion.
Joining us live to discuss is NTD Business host Don Ma. Don, what does the New York Fed's report tell us about the state of the consumer?
Sure, but first let me reiterate some of the data points in the report so that we're all on the same page here. So as you mentioned earlier, overall debt levels increased during the third quarter to nearly $17.3 trillion. And within that overall debt, credit card borrowing levels rose to nearly $1.1 trillion. And here's what a New York Fed economist said all this means from their perspective, that the large jump in credit card balances, it aligns with strong consumer spending and as well as strong GDP growth in the third quarter.
And is there any concern for these high debt levels coupled with high borrowing costs?
Well, you're right there, Steph. There is a bit of a concern because even though consumer spending has fueled the last quarter's GDP, it seems like a lot of that spending was done through debt, and a growing number of households are actually having difficulty wrangling that debt amid high interest rates. Overall debt delinquency increased by 3% in the last quarter, and the latest data showed that the rate of households becoming delinquent or entering serious delinquency on their credit cards was the highest since the end of 2011. Even New York Fed researchers found the spike in household delinquency surprising and unusual. The rise in credit card delinquency rates can be seen across the spectrum. That's in terms of income and region. But according to the New York Fed, it's particularly noticeable among millennials and those with auto loans or student loans.
Don, why are households falling behind on debt?
Well, according to the report, it's saying that finding an exact explanation for the delinquency rise is difficult, but it does raise a couple of possibilities. Whether this is a consequence of shifting in lending or overextension or higher borrowing costs and price pressures. But Chris, at the end of the day, they said that more research is probably needed on this topic. But to me, another possible reason I think could be the resumption of student loan payments, and that's putting more pressure on households. The report says that overall student loan debt rose by $30 billion, standing now at $1.6 trillion in the third quarter. But besides that, auto loan balances were also up as well by $13 billion in the third quarter, now standing at $1.6 trillion.
All right, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Discouraging news for potential home buyers. New research shows this is the least affordable housing market since 1984. According to Intercontinental Exchange, more of a person's household income goes toward paying a mortgage than in recent years. High interest rates and the high cost for housing are to blame. The report shows the trend over the past 35 years was housing cost about 25% of a family's income. It now stands at nearly 41%. On the flip side, that means existing homeowners are enjoying increased wealth on their properties. Despite high GDP numbers and low unemployment, Americans are clearly still facing a cash crunch caused by high inflation and rising costs of living. Now, a growing number of Americans are cracking into their retirement fund nest eggs to help pay bills. That's according to a report from Bank of America. BOA says the number of its 401k plan participants pulling cash out has increased by 27% since the first quarter of this year. That's over 18,000 people, the highest level in the 5 quarters the bank has been tracking this data. The average withdrawal, just over $5,000. Walmart is making changes at its U.S. stores. That's to create a calmer experience for neurodiverse individuals with sensory disabilities. Starting on Friday, the retail giant will have sensory-friendly hours from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., 7 days a week. During that time, stores will lower the lights, turn off the radio, and set in-store TV walls to a static image. These measures are meant to provide a less stimulating environment. Walmart said it learned about the benefits of those efforts during a pilot test for the back-to-school shopping period.
Up next, Slovakia is changing course. It won't send weapons to Ukraine. This amid major policy shifts as a new government is taking over.
And the U.S. is countering China's Belt and Road Initiative with an investment of over $500 million in a Sri Lanka port. We'll have the details soon when we return.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Did you know African elephants could become extinct in our lifetime? In fact, more than 90% are already gone. If we don't act now, they will disappear forever. But we can't do it alone, because when it comes to saving elephants, it's you plus IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. You plus IFAW together can help stop poaching, protect habitats, and save thousands of elephants. Call or go online right now to join IFAW.org and give $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. You can save elephants and the places they call home. Together, we can fund rangers to stop poachers in their tracks, protect the land elephants need to roam and survive, and provide loving care for those who have been orphaned so they can one day be released back into the wild. But the only way we can do this life-saving work is with you plus IFAW. So call or go online with your gift right now. With the monthly support of people just like you, elephants like Moses are alive and thriving today. It takes years of hard work from dedicated teams so orphaned elephants can learn the skills they need to survive in the wild. So please, call now or go online with your monthly gift. You can help provide the urgent care elephants need so this generation won't be the last. And when you use your credit card, you'll get this exclusive membership kit, including your very own IFAW t-shirt to show it's you plus IFAW standing together to help rescue and care for these majestic creatures. The danger for elephants is more urgent than ever before. That's why we need you. It's going to take all of us to help save elephants before they disappear forever. So please, call right away or go to joinifaw.org with your monthly gift, because together, you plus IFAW can save lives.
Good morning, I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Welcome back, and now we head to the top news of the day from Europe.
The European Union is saying membership talks with Ukraine could start.
However, that's only if a list of conditions are met. The president of the European Commission says Ukraine has completed 90% of the necessary steps.
Main progress has been achieved on the constitutional justice reform, on the selection of the High Council of Justice, the anti-corruption program, progress on anti-money laundering, important measures to curb the oligarchs' grip on the public life, new media law, and progress on national minorities.
EU leaders now have to decide on whether to accept the Commission's recommendation to start talks with Ukraine. They're expected to decide at a summit in December.
The EU is also considering beginning membership talks with Moldova and Bosnia. Both are countries in Eastern Europe. However, they too have to meet certain criteria.
Slovakia today deciding not to send rockets and ammunition to Ukraine. It's a major change under the country's new government.
The previous government had drafted a donation plan for Ukraine, which is now rejected. Slovakia's incoming prime minister campaigned on halting military aid to Ukraine.
The country shares a border with Ukraine. So far, it's sent over $700 million worth of aid to Ukraine. As a proportion of GDP, that's the fifth most of any country in the world. And Russia today says nuclear weapons talks with the U.S. are necessary. However, Russian officials say they're not ready to be lectured.
The situation between the two has gotten worse recently, with multiple arms control treaties disintegrating. The treaties sought to slow the Cold War arms race and reduce the risk of nuclear war.
President Vladimir Putin last week signed a law revoking ratification of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Russia now says talks are needed. Russian President Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, is hosting a top Chinese general today. This comes as the two countries continue to strengthen military ties. At today's meeting, Putin said modern weapons will ensure the security of both Russia and China.
The Russian defense minister also met with the Chinese general today. That's the second meeting between the two in just 10 days. They say they're discussing steps to strengthen cooperation.
And to round up headlines from Europe, we have news out of Spain. Police clashed with protesters in the northern region of Catalonia for 2 nights in a row now.
The protesters don't want Spain's acting government to negotiate with Catalan separatist parties. Catalonia has its own language, but an independence movement in 2017 failed, and key leaders had to flee Spain.
Parties on the left generally support the separatists, while parties on the right are against talks for amnesty. The separatists are asking for amnesty for thousands involved in Catalonia's independence movement.
On Spain's side, the ruling Socialist Party wants to secure Catalan support to maintain power. About 7,000 people joined the protest last night, roughly double the night before. And now we're heading to Asia and Oceania.
The G7 foreign ministers meeting is wrapping up in Japan.
Coming out of the meeting, Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the current state of affairs concerning Israel, Ukraine, China, and North Korea. He argued against an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war.
But as I discussed with my G7 colleagues, those calling for an immediate ceasefire have an obligation to explain how to address the unacceptable result it would likely bring about. Hamas left in place with more than 200 hostages, with the capacity and stated intent to repeat October 7th again and again and again.
In a statement following 2 days of talks in Tokyo, the G7 nations announced a unified stance on the Israel-Hamas war.
The foreign ministers criticized Hamas attacks against Israel, voiced support for Israel's right to defend itself, and called for humanitarian pauses to speed aid to civilians in the Gaza Strip.
And commenting on conflicts elsewhere, Blinken said there was enduring support across the G7 for Ukraine in its war with Russia.
Blinken said the group was willing to work constructively with China on shared challenges, but that the nations must also be clear and direct on their differences.
The G7 also condemned North Korea for repeatedly launching ballistic missiles and supplying arms to Russia.
Blinken is now in South Korea for talks with the country's foreign minister.
The U.S. today announced over $550 million in financing for a port terminal in Sri Lanka. That's as Washington looks to curb Beijing's influence in the region.
The project aims to provide critical infrastructure for a South Asian nation. It's billed as having the potential to turn the port city into a top-tier logistics hub.
That's really the priority of President Biden through his partnership for global infrastructure and investment, to have high quality, high standard projects that respect local laws and conditions, that are transparent, that don't burden countries with debt at a sovereign level, but instead help finance the private sector.
The announcement comes as Sri Lanka is struggling to recover from a dire economic crisis. China is the country's largest bilateral creditor, having lent out more than $7 billion in loans.
Sri Lanka has been a key player of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a scheme that the U.S. has labeled as debt trap diplomacy.
Staying in Asia, Cambodia deported 25 Japanese nationals accused of an online scamming operation. Local media says the suspects were arrested in the middle of September.
Cambodian authorities said they would be sent to Japan via Malaysia. The arrest warrants were issued as requested by the Japanese embassy after this scam operation targeted their residents.
And chaos in Australia, where millions were left without phone or internet connection today. The country's second largest telecom provider reported a nationwide outage.
Some Optus services were gradually restored, but the outage crippled payment systems, which affected businesses. Some cafes even saw a drop of 50% in business.
Optus CEO ruled out a cyber attack, but didn't give a reason for the outage. Coming up, a space-bound journey marking the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's first folio. We have more on the destiny of the historical work.
And a bear caught on camera stealing food from the front door of a Florida home. More on the porch theft shortly here on NTD News Today.
If you've been injured in an accident that's not your fault and you don't have an attorney, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by to tell you what your case is potentially worth. Hello, I'm Gina, along with spokesperson Rob. Rob, tell the folks at home who should be calling right now.
Well, just like you said, Gina, anyone who's been injured in an accident that was not your fault, you don't have an attorney, give us a call right now, and we're going to let you know what your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Rob. So what kind of calls have we been seeing today?
Well, Gina, we're getting calls from all types of accidents today. Work accidents, slip and falls, truck accidents, and most commonly, car accidents. So if you were injured in an accident that was not your fault, you don't have an attorney, take that first step, pick up that phone and give us a call. We're going to answer your questions and we'll let you know how much money you can get for your accident.
Thanks, Rob. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Go ahead, don't hesitate, take that first step and call now.
Do you listen to the TV on high volume or have trouble hearing conversations? Then you would benefit from hearing aids. Don't waste thousands on expensive hearing aids when you can get Nano's revolutionary technology for just $297. Don't be fooled by higher-priced hearing aids. The CIC Recharge is a true hearing aid, not an amplifier. With rechargeable technology many customers say is superior to more expensive models. Call now and get not one, but 2 Nano hearing aids for just $297. Plus, we'll add a portable charging case and ship your order absolutely free. The CIC Recharge has a tiny in-the-ear canal design that is nearly invisible. Why keep missing out on important conversations or waste thousands of dollars? Call and get 2 CIC Recharge hearing aids for only $297 and free shipping.
800-631-4622. Again, that's 800-631-4622.
All right, I'm at the house, and I'm gonna head inside. Okay, come on, this door. I'm in the house.
What do you see?
Let me check the den. There's nothing in the den. Let me check the kitchen. There's no one downstairs, it looks like.
Wait, what was that?
I don't know. Let me head upstairs.
What do you see?
What the? Did you shut this bathroom door?
No.
Oh,
What?
It's not here.
What do you mean?
The gun's not here.
What? Where is it?
Oh my God.
What's going on?
Cam.
Oh my God, what's going
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam, please, please, open the door, Cameron. Come on, Cam.
Thank you for staying with us. A portrait of William Shakespeare and a copy of a speech from A Midsummer Night's Dream are going to the edge of space. Let's take a look.
This portrait of William Shakespeare hovers near the edge of space, marking 400 years since the first volume of the iconic playwright's works was published.
The image of Shakespeare atop the world. I mean, come on, that is a literal metaphor, right? For Shakespeare being the world's dramatist.
Filmmaker Jack Jewers sent the image as well as a speech from A Midsummer Night's Dream up in a weather balloon for a film series paying tribute to the anniversary. His 6 short films explore contemporary issues such as refugees at sea or the war in Ukraine, combined with Shakespearean speeches and poems.
People all too often can kind of get too intimidated by his language. But actually, once you get past that, the themes that he is exploring in his drama are every bit as kind of gripping and relevant to our everyday lives as something we watch on TV today.
That first volume of plays is known as Shakespeare's First Folio. It's considered one of the most important books in English literature. Without it, plays, including Macbeth, might have been lost. Shakespeare's friends compiled the folio 7 years after his death, publishing it on November 8, 1623. It's believed some 750 copies were printed, containing 36 plays. Will Tosh is the head of research at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London.
Shakespeare's colleagues, his fellow actors, theatre company owners, decided to pull that material together and produce a kind of testament to their former colleague, to the greatest playwright that they had certainly ever worked with, and as it turned out, the greatest playwright in the English language.
If you have any old $2 bills lying around, they could be worth thousands.
Even some newer bills, such as those printed in 2003, could have significant value.
One $2 bill from 2003 with a very low serial number recently sold at auction for $2,400, and it later resold for $4,000. That's according to Heritage Auction, the largest auction house in the world that deals with currency.
The auction site, U.S. Currency Auctions, estimates that uncirculated $2 bills from nearly every year up to 1917 are worth at least $1,000.
A key factor to look for is the color of the seal. You can find a complete list of the values of collectible $2 bills at uscurrencyauctions.com.
Keeping marriages and relationships strong are a must for health and longevity. Here's Gina Marie from Strong Mind and Body with some tips to help you bond.
Even if you are already married, continuing to date your spouse has many advantages. Consistently dating your spouse is statistically linked to a happier and sturdier marriage. Researchers found that there were many benefits as a result of continued dating after tying the knot. This includes better communication, commitment, de-stressing, and sharing novel experiences. But once you are married, household expenses and raising children leaves less money and time for dating. To help meet this challenge, here are some easy and affordable date ideas. Number 1, just talk. The essence of human connection is communication, in other words, the sharing between souls. Turn on your favourite music in the background to help create mood. Number 2, cook together. Cooking a gourmet meal as a couple will be a gift of nourishment to each other's bodies and hearts alike. The closeness of families and couples comes from sharing the simple daily realities of eating, sleeping, working, playing, and praying. Number 3, visit a winery or brewery. Wineries are often located in picturesque settings with rolling hills lined with twisting grapes. With such a background and a glass of wine, good conversation will naturally follow. Number 4, choose a direction and drive. A spontaneous car trip with no set destination can enliven a date with a sense of adventure and the unexpected. You don't know what's over the horizon, whether it's a restaurant, park, orchard, or museum. Number 5, visit a historic house. Consider taking a tour of a historic mansion. You'll get to see beautiful architecture, period clothing, and furnishings. You'll also learn about your local history from the knowledgeable tour guides. And number 6, stargaze. This is a classic for a reason. Take a basket of refreshments, an astronomy guide, and set up with a good view of the stars and minimal light pollution. You can see a great deal with the naked eye.
And here's an update to your travel bucket list. Check out National Geographic's cool list of places to travel.
The entire states of New York and Texas made the cut. Specifically, National Geographic advises visiting New York City, Lake Placid, and Niagara Falls.
Texas is recommended for having several great spots to catch next year's total solar eclipse. Miami, Florida also made the cool list for the United States.
About half of the 30 places on the list are in Europe, including the ruins of Pompeii and the mountains of Albania.
Some other cool spots include Lima, Peru, and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula.
Head on over to your closest national park on Saturday. The National Park Service is waiving all entrance fees for Veterans Day. You'll start to have to pay for services like camping, boat launches, or special tours.
There are more than 400 national park sites across the country. This is the last chance for free admission this year.
A bear in Florida has a taste for Taco Bell. It was caught stealing food delivery from a family's front porch.
Surveillance video shows an Uber Eats delivery driver dropping off food on the porch. A black bear then approaches the front door, grabs the bag, and heads off.
It took a few minutes for the family to realize what had happened. Bears are common in their neighborhood.
After the video of the cheeky fellow went viral on social media, Uber Eats has reportedly refunded the cost of the food.
That's all for today's news.
Thank you for tuning in.
Feel free to reach out to us with news tips or feedback at news.today@ntd.com.
And we'll be back with more stories tomorrow.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.